What track would you like to guest announce at?
I think for me, Jeremy, it would probably be at the Delaware County Fair. I'm a half-mile track guy, and I don't need binoculars. I've just been that half-mile track guy forever. I've been fortunate to work with Roger Houston on 4 separate occasions. Last April of 22, we got a call from a racetrack out in Calgary, Century Downs. They doomed it up as Legends Day. They had me in as the Canadian legend. They had Houston in as the American legend. It was a great time. And I think the big thing that happened at the end, what Houston had mentioned, it was one of his most special times of promoting harness racing. I was very proud to be a part of it.
If I could guest announce at any other track, I'll tell you, I'm going to sidestep the question to a certain degree. I wish I had a time machine. Put another way, I wish I could build a time machine, because I have always been captivated by a track that is long gone, a track called Good Time Park, which existed in upstate New York in Goshen. It's no longer there. There are a few remnants. I think a few pieces of the hub rail are still in place. But Good Time Park was an oddball-shaped mile track. It was very narrow at one end. It was very broad on the other. And this was the track where for many years the Hambletonian was held. And I love going back and reading old articles and seeing old pictures. In a way, from what I've seen and read, it was a country type of setting, very relaxed setting, and a beautiful setting. So I wish that I could go back in time and call the races at Good Time Park. Now, okay, to be fair, since clearly your question is asking about, but what about a track today? You know, I can say that there is no other track where I wish I could go announce. And let me explain that. It's not because there's a lack of respect, it's the opposite. There's a great deal of respect for other racetracks and frankly for the voices who call the races there. I'm a firm believer that the track announcer is part of the ambiance or personality of the racetrack. And that's why, are there tracks I would like to visit? Sure. There are tracks I would love to go visit as a fan. But I would not want to go to call races there, because I would rather go as a fan and just enjoy the experience and listen to the one who does call races there. If I were to give you an example, I've never been to Aqueduct. I would love to go there just because Aqueduct's been around a long time. There's a lot of history. I have never been to Mohawk. I've been to Woodbine. I have never been to the harness races for the Woodbine at Mohawk meet. I would love to go experience that sometime. Parks Racing in Philadelphia, another track that's been around a long time. I would love to go there sometime. Again, plenty of tracks I would like to visit, but as a fan and enjoy the talents of the one who does call the races.
That's a tough question, because I've been pretty lucky throughout my lifetime growing up in the racing industry, going to a lot of tracks as a kid, and now as I've gotten older, I've tried to continue checking off more from the list. So there's a lot of really cool spots. I've been fortunate enough to have called a race at the Meadowlands. I've called a race at the Red Mile. So I'm probably trying to think of somewhere maybe off the beaten path a little bit that I think it would be kind of neat to call at. I mean, I don't speak Swedish, so I guess I can't call it Solvalla for the Elite Lock, or I wouldn't be over in France. But maybe a spot like the Little Brown Jug, I guess, just to say you called a race there too. You know, there's a place that right away just has so much history, and it's so cool to be part of that. So but maybe that'd be the spot, the Delaware County Fairgrounds.
Boy, you know, what just happened a couple days ago, I think the Little Brown Jug would be fun to do, just simply because they've got, you know, all thousands and thousands of people just cheering at the top of their lungs from the start to the finish. I think that would be a great track to guest announce at. You know, obviously in the thoroughbred side, you know, a track like Saratoga. I think any racetrack that's got a good crowd and good attendance, because as an announcer, you can feed off the energy of that big crowd. And I think the Little Brown Jug, would take the cake. It'd be great to call a race there.
Well, actually, I certainly crossed off part of that. Was I got to call races at the Delaware County Fair for Jug Week just last week. That was super, super, super cool. But one of the things that's on my bucket list that I haven't got to do yet is I want to announce a steeplechase race in England. So if I got one opportunity to do something, it would be to announce a steeplechase race in England. That's one thing I haven't done yet.
Probably Charlottetown. I think it would be cool. They just, anywhere in the Maritimes, right? They just have such a passionate fan base, and to see what happens on Gold Cup and Saucer Night there at Red Shore, Charlottetown is just phenomenal. And like, sometimes you're just watching like a normal Tuesday afternoon card there, and it just seems like there's a decent crowd. Something I would kill to have in Manitoba on a Saturday afternoon, right? And I think just the energy they have, and if just, hey, throw me in a couple races during Old Town or Old Home Week, and I'll be fine.
I've done a race at Chester. I've done a race at the Meadowlands. I've called at Vernon Downs, Charlestown. If I was going to guess for an entire card, of places I haven't been yet, Woodbine Mohawk would be at the top of the list. Charlottetown would be next. One of the things I want to do before, I'm not capable of doing it anymore, is go watch the Gold Cup and Saucer, because I want to meet Vance Cameron. The other night, we have people that race at Rosecroft who are, from PEI, and, it was Louis DeLuper's race, as a matter of fact. After the wire, I went, boom, just like that, because I love Vance Cameron. I think Vance is amazing. Can everybody do that style at every track? No, it wouldn't work some places, but it's awesome there. It's awesome for the Gold Cup and Saucer, and it's awesome for that audience. And that's probably another thing I want to get to before I can. I've already mapped it out. It's like a 16-hour drive from Maryland. So I've already figured out how to do it. I just got to have the time to do it because of the timing of when that race is, and a little family cooperation as well. But I would say probably Woodbine Mohawk, Charlottetown, and I've not announced at Yonkers, so I would probably want to try Yonkers at some point as well.
Does it have to be a track that's still functioning? Yeah, I don't know, right? Like, I'd kind of love to call a race, in its heyday. If I could have called a race of like Hialeah, and that was still like the place to be in South Florida, that would be a memory I probably wouldn't forget. I don't know. I got to call a race, even like a track like Golden Gate Fields. I've been to tracks across the country. I'm the kind of guy, and I think a lot of horse racing people kind of plan vacations based on like which racetrack can I visit while I'm on vacation. So my vacations have always been based on traveling to racetracks. I've lived in 7 states, and I've never been to California. So like a track like Golden Gate to me would be really fun. I know a lot of people would say like, Santa Anita Del Mar, but if I can call a track, a historical track, I would think Hialeah in its heyday would be really cool to call the race. Maybe Keeneland, only because that's like I spend every October for 6 years going to Keeneland, and I miss it. But no, let's go with that. If I could call a race at one track, I'd have to time travel and probably call a race at Hialeah.
If I could guest announce at a track, I always thought it'd be cool to call a race at the Delaware County Fairgrounds, because it's a more intimate setting, a smaller half-mile track, but the people turn out in droves. It's loud, it's very rural, it's country fair kind of atmosphere. So that would be a cool place to call a race.
Well, I hate to repeat, but I've had the privilege of calling races all over America, Canada, and even Sweden. So I've had a chance to work at the big tracks like the Meadowlands, Woodbine, Mohawk, perhaps one day. And I did visit the track last week on vacation in Paris, France. the historic Vincennes, the Hippodrome Vincennes in Paris. Just a beautiful track, and perhaps one day I'll have a chance to call a race there.
Well, I would say a couple of tracks potentially. One that surprisingly, in a way, I never did get to call at, but I'd like to someday, even if it's just a race, is the Meadowlands. Obviously, the mecca of harness racing. I spent time in New Jersey, so I got to call, of course, a lot at Freehold Raceway, the track I was working at. Called at Garden State Park, a track which is unfortunately no longer in operation. Never did get the chance, though, to call at the Big M, and would love to do that once. And, I think if you're a harness racing fan, too, it'd be pretty cool to call a race at the Little Brown Jug sometime.
A track by the name of Ocean Downs, down in Baltimore, Maryland. I've tuned into that one in the summertime, during my downtime, right? We're a winter track in London. So at Ocean Downs in Baltimore, Maryland, I've watched and I've seen the tarmac crowds. I feed off of big crowds at racetracks when I'm calling races. So for me, Ocean Downs, that would be a track that I would love to call harness racing action at someday.
Guest announce at any racetrack that I haven't already announced at, I would probably go with the Meadowlands, just because that's the spot, right? That's a big track.
Well, I've done majority of the ones in Ontario, so like Mohawk is kind of on my bucket list to just announce there, because it's kind of like the prestige track in Canada. Mohawk or Meadowlands, one of those two tracks would be pretty cool. Just kind of pick the stuff up a little bit. But I love the small tracks, it's a lot of fun, but definitely I'd love to do Mohawk in the future.
I really enjoy watching the thoroughbreds, and I've never been offered the opportunity to call a thoroughbred race. So I would love to fill in at a program one time at Woodbine in Toronto.
I'm not sure. I guess everyone would think it would probably be Mohawk Woodbine Park, but I don't know. I think probably if you're going to guest track somewhere, you'd want the audience there. So I probably think Delaware, Ohio, the Little Brown Jug, to call a race there someday, just because you got 30 to 50,000 people yelling and screaming, and how they have the microphones on the infield and all that kind of feel. So I would think just any race at the Jug on the Thursday would be great to be able to do.
I don't think I'm somebody who would want to guest announce somewhere, because you're not likely to do a very good job, because there's so many variables. And I'd hate to go somewhere after being an announcer for 30 years and go somewhere and just completely suck at it. But yet the likelihood that you'd be very good is low. But, notwithstanding that, if you're just talking for the fun of it, how about Churchill Downs? Just because that's the home of the Kentucky Derby. And then not only that, if I announced thoroughbreds, I'd have an excuse to not be any good because I've never done it before.
Back, I guess it'd be about 10 years ago, I got a call from Greg Blanchard. And Greg at the time was working at Woodbine and Mohawk. That's when they raced harness racing at Woodbine. But they were short. I think it was in the winter months. I believe Ken Middleton may have been on holidays, or there was an illness or something. And bottom line, they just had a problem getting someone to back up. And they gave me a call, and it was like, I tell you, I was jittery. I was nervous. They had me back probably half a dozen times, and it was really the highlight to be at Woodbine. It's like I'll say, Scotiabank Arena or the Maple Leaf Gardens of harness racing. I also was able to fill in once with Ken at Mohawk, and it was a real thrill. The Meadowlands would be kind of fun as well. I don't know if that would happen. Ken Workington generally has a backup team, but I would say right now, Mohawk or Woodbine. I have guest announced there, and it's really been a thrill. So that was probably a highlight.
I'll give you two answers for that, because I'll give you a thoroughbred answer and a harness racing answer. Harness racing, definitely Woodbine Mohawk Park. I watch pretty much every race there. And like some people complain sometimes that there's not enough action in the race, or there's too much time between races, but I do love it. It's great racing. North America Cup's coming up. I'm a fan, absolutely, and I don't just watch on North America Cup night, but I watch all the time. That would be a fun thing for me to do would be to fill in there. I think I have a good handle on what goes on there, the horses, the drivers, everything. I think I could do it, and that would be the one for me. It's the mecca of harness racing in Canada, no doubt about that. For thoroughbreds, I would go south of the border, and my absolute favorite track to visit, to watch, to bet on, and I've been there a few times. It's a beautiful place. It would be Del Mar, San Diego area, California. Just an awesome track, beautiful setting. Can't really have a bad day there, and to be able to call there would obviously be a privilege and a lot of fun.
I think Flemington in Melbourne, because it's my home track. I used to go there so often. It's a magnificent track, and it's the home of the Melbourne Cup. And I've always said that that would possibly be my favorite track that I used to go to. It's just such a lovely spot. You know, you could just stroll around there and just take in the gardens and the paddocks and the walking ring, and just the beautiful areas to sit and enjoy, to watch racing from. I've been up in the announcers or race callers booth a couple of times up there. It's a massive track, it's a large track, so it would need some preparation after all these years of not being there, but it is my home track in the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm going to Flemington as a kid. I was like, oh, I love it. You know, I just couldn't wait to get there. I think that's the track. But at the same time, you know, I've had guest announce opportunities, and it's been nice. I had a guest opportunity to announce at Kuala Lumpur, to Singapore's Bukit Timah when I was in Asia, some racetracks in the United States. I was a guest announcer at part of what was the, what I think they called the eve of the Breeders' Cup, before it became a 2-day event. It used to be an opportunity for race callers to be invited to call a race. Race Callers Day it was, I think. I can't remember the official title, but I did get to call at Belmont Park, and that was actually one of the tracks I really wanted to call at. So I was so delighted. One of my colleagues from Emerald Downs, where I worked in Seattle, ended up working in NYRA, the New York Racing, and he was able to get me into that, because it was somehow I never ever got an opportunity until then. And he did get me a chance to do that, and he said to me, just watch out for the entries. You're going to go early in the program. They're going to put you in as one of the earlier races. And I was at the airport waiting for the entries. I came in a couple of days earlier, and I looked, and they all overfilled for the stakes race that was one of the stakes races coming up later in the program, and they split it, and the race that I called was the stakes race on the grass, and it was exactly what I wanted. And I was so happy, and it was a nose finish. I was like, oh my gosh. So it was exciting. So when you asked me, Belmont was in there, and I got to do that, and Flemington would be one, because I think that's the one that I'd like to say, oh, I had a chance to call it my home track. I call it my home track. It's everyone's track.
I would love to call a race at Hawthorne. That's home. I've never called a race there. That would be my first choice, Hawthorne. And my buddy of 40 years has been the announcer there, Peter Galassi. But yeah, definitely Hawthorne.
Keeneland. I mean, except for the same colored saddle towels, which gives me hives just thinking about it. But I go off silks, not saddle towels anyway, so in theory it's not a problem. But yeah, Keeneland, by far, Keeneland.
You know, I can't think of any harness tracks other than Cal Expo that I haven't, that's one I haven't been to. I haven't been to the Ohio Fair tracks, but I must compliment them because the Ohio Harness Horse Association has started to stream online 126 dates each summer from these obscure places like Xenia, Ohio, and Sylvania, Ohio. And so it's a whole new world to me out there. And I would like to, before my day is done, get to some of these places because it's the real love of harness racing, the real love of the animal, and the real love of the game.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to do a little bit of that when I started out in my career, and I think I've announced at 5 tracks together, along with Northside and the Maritimes. I've done a few stints at Inverness Raceway, which is great. They have a Inverness Gathering Week there where they race 2 or 3 times, and on a couple of those cards they have like a big night of racing there. Last year I was fortunate enough to get to do that card. Unfortunately, Gordy McNeil, the track announcer there, was ill, and so I got to fill in and do the card. And I'm telling you, it was jammed everywhere. You looked out from the announcer's booth, there was vehicles everywhere, there's people everywhere. They just love it, and just like they do in North Sydney. So I've called races up there probably several times over the years. I've also did a couple of races at Truro Raceway, which is maybe one of the faster tracks, along with Charlottetown and Summerside in the Maritimes. And they've just renovated their grandstand up there now, so I can't wait to get up and see that at some point, because it certainly looks like it's going to be a really great venue. And then, of course, the dream spot for me is the announcer's booth at the Charlottetown Driving Park at Red Shores, and I've been lucky enough over the years to call a race or two in most of the old home weeks there, because, like I said, my dad and I would visit Old Home Week every year since I was about 13, and he passed away about 8 years ago, but I've still gone over there, and there's a group of us go over every year. I missed 1 year because of COVID. And so other than that, that's the fixture, and I also did a couple of races in Summerside as well during their week a few times. So Charlottetown's a spot. The Gold Cup and Saucer in the Maritimes is the race, but any race during Old Home Week is great to get up there and be part of that. Other than that, I mean, a lot of people would probably say like the Little Brown Jug, again, being a half-mile track announcer, that would be probably a nice thing because of the crowd and the spectacle of that event. But and the other one for me might be like to announce a race if I was ever, not that I have been yet, but if I ever visited Europe, doing a little bit of research and watching some races there. I know in Sweden that harness racing there is huge. The government's a big part of it. Lots of fan support, and that would be really cool. If I couldn't get to announce there, I think it'd be really neat to go over there and watch the races and be part of that, because I think there's a real great passion for harness racing there in Europe as well.
Which track would I like to? Well, for years now, this is funny. I told you earlier that I guess called it Northfield Park. Well, when I used to do those, I call them practice programs. I used to just do ours. Well, our meet would only go until like the beginning of December or whatever, and then that would be it. And the other track wouldn't open up until like, at the time it would be like the middle of January. So you'd have like a month where there's like a lull where there was nothing. So in 2007, I got the bright idea. I'm saying, because in that time our purses had went up because we got the casinos and all that stuff. So our purses took a big hike. So in that time we inherited a lot of Northfield Park's horsemen and horses because of it. And it became a thing over a year span, because it happened in 2006 when the purses went up. So at the end of 2007, I'm like, man, since we do all this sharing of horses with Northfield, it's kind of like our sister track across the lake. Maybe I should tune in on these, as a bettor, and maybe and as an announcer, because at the time nobody knew about me wanting to be an announcer. I was kind of like doing it off to the side just for fun. I didn't even really take it serious back then, but I wanted to have more practice, so I jumped on Northfield's bandwagon and started pulling their programs from like off-track betting facilities used to have them, or I would get them after off-track betting closed down. I was getting them off the computer, off the USTA. I was getting them off the program thing there, and I was printing them off like I said, right up until Ayers. When Ayers stopped announcing at Northfield last December, that's when I stopped printing out the programs and doing all that. It kind of, I was like, oh, if he's done, I'm done. I'll just focus on what I got, because it was a lot on my plate. It was like I was doing too much, but I always had the thing. Well, Tom Brady always practiced every day, and he's got 7 Super Bowl rings, and he never stopped practicing. So why should I? I want to get where I want to be. I need to practice. So, but I've kind of slowed down on that because I kind of had to. I needed to free up some time.
It's a tough question. I really enjoy going anywhere new. So, anywhere that I haven't been, it's just always a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to call the races at the Meadowlands one night. And on the harness side, that's pretty cool. That's obviously our biggest and best. It's tough to say because, I think my 2 favorite tracks till the end of my time are always going to be Pompano Park and the Red Mile. And I had the opportunity to call both those, fortunately. No longer Pompano, unfortunately. But, I don't know. I would say just anywhere new. Maybe that I try something new out, something different that I haven't done. I mean, regardless of how big or how small. not many people are probably looking forward to going to parks in the winter, the first week of December, but I think that's pretty cool. So it's I'm anxious to do so, and going to go, I think, in a day early so I can check out the races here at Philly as well.
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that, and I think I do announce at a great racetrack. I think if somebody says you get to pick one place to go, I might just drive right up to Clinton. It's a beautiful spot. I mentioned before, Jessica and Ian do such a fantastic job, for a small track, racing once a week, 15 dates a summer. So I'm really excited about going there. If I could pick one other track, I like the half-mile tracks. I like the fact that you're right on top of the racing. I've only done one 5/8 mile track myself, and that was at Hiawatha, and that was an enjoyable experience. I'm grateful to Dave Walls for giving a shout out to me last year to go up there. But I might go to one of the tracks in PEI, either Summerside or Charlottetown Driving Park. I have visited Charlottetown. I've been to the races there. That would be a lot of fun. There is something friendly and close up about the half-mile experience, and so I think that would be my first go-to in terms of responding to your question. I would love to try and call a thoroughbred race. I've never done that. I threw my name in when they were looking for an announcer at Fort Erie, and I was unsuccessful, and that's fine. But I'm going to throw one other thing out there. I would love to be the game day announcer for the Toronto Argonauts. I'm a huge CFL fan. My grandfather was with the Argos, played on the 1914 Grey Cup champion, and that would be my ultimate announcing gig outside of harness racing. I would love to do that. And my one last thought is I've chatted with Ken Middleton. I love the name of his horse running now. I think the horse is 3 or 4 years old. Bob Loblaw. That is the coolest name for a horse, and I would love a chance to announce a race with Bob Loblaw in the field. I would try to get the crowd to say it with me somehow. Here he comes, Bob Loblaw. That would be fun.
Well, if I had to, and of course we're all getting older and that, I guess I should say Woodbine, being a Canadian, but probably Santa Anita, being the great race place. I've been there before. It's a jewel of a place too, with the San Gabriel's in the background there. And they have that unique downhill turf course. I'm not sure if I'd want to try that one though, because they kind of get hidden as they cross over and in that bend, and they come down the hill. Maybe Churchill Downs, but I would think Santa Anita. Maybe even New York. I mean, come on, it's one of the big four that you want to go to: Woodbine, Aqueduct, Belmont, whatever, Churchill, and Santa Anita. So that would be a great thing to do for sure.
There would be another track, because when I was first getting in the business and I was a groom, I was sitting on the back stretch at Scioto Downs after I had cooled out the horse that I was taking care of that night. And Steve Cross was the announcer at Scioto Downs, and I was sitting there and I thought, man, it would be so cool to be the announcer at Scioto Downs. So to have that job and then to pick up Miami Valley and Dayton, there's no other place that I would really want to be.
So in harness racing, I think I would have to say the Meadowlands would be the first one that comes to mind. After that, possibly Woodbine, something like that. But the Meadowlands is, kind of the big one, particularly if you grew up in the U.S. For harness racing. It's the Mecca. You definitely would always want to have a chance to call at least one race there. So that would be kind of cool.
I think I'd really like to call a race at Keeneland. Keeneland is one of my favorite places of all time. It's a very high-class atmosphere, and I think that would be a real dream, would be to call a race there.
For Canada, I guess it would be Woodbine. I mean, that's the Mecca, right? And it would be a bit of a change, because like the turf races are on the outside of the dirt, and then they got 2 more turf courses to the inside. So it would be kind of a change with the quarter poles and the halves and stuff like that. But we got to get there first before we got to worry about it. So
If it was in Canada, I'd love to do Woodbine. I mean, Woodbine is in my opinion, sort of the Everest of track announcing. I know Woodbine does more thoroughfare than it does harness, but still, I think Woodbine would be great. I'd love to go back to Flamborough again. I mean, where I debuted back in April of this year, just to show them how much better I think I am personally. And again, I'm not great at what I do. But please don't anybody misunderstand that I've got an ego about me, because I don't. I've got so much to learn and so much, but I know for a fact from listening that I've come leaps and bounds from where I was back in April and starting doing this. I'd love to go back to Flamborough again and work alongside Gary Guy for an evening and spend, do a couple races back and forth with him and that. And then if I was going to be down in the States, I mean, the Little Brown Jug in Ohio would be a wonderful place. Not that race per se, but the track in Ohio, or the Meadowlands. I'd love to go down and do a race at the Meadowlands, just because, again, it is the be-all and end-all of harness tracks as far as the U.S. is concerned. So if I had a choice between, like I said, any places between Canada and the U.S., those would be my choices.
Don't know that I've really looked at other tracks as far as wanting to guest announce. One of my favorite views in the entire world of racing is Gulfstream. But would I ever want to announce at Gulfstream? No. I admire the guys like Pete Aiello and the Thoroughbred announcers. I got asked one time, we're going back 25 years, but I got asked one time to fill in. I was just a last-minute emergency sub at Thistledown. And I can tell you, without a doubt, I am a horrible Thoroughbred announcer. You don't realize how much of a help it is with harness racing for two things. One, that the drivers wear the same colors every race, and two, that you've got that buffer that the wheels kind of keep the horses separate a little bit, and you can see when two horses are side by side, you can still see both of their saddle pads in most cases. Well, that's not the case in Thoroughbreds. So, would I love to work at a track like Gulfstream? Oh, it'd be a great place to be around, but would I want to announce there? No. So, no, I really haven't looked at a track and said, well, I'd like to announce there. So, I'm happy where I'm at.
Well, out here in Alberta, we're a bit of a different breed. We call all breeds here in Alberta. And so, man, I mean, of course, I'd love to call a race in California, Del Mar or Santa Anita, or for Naira, but calling a race probably in Ontario, Woodbine would be a big one, or Woodbine Mohawk. And of course, the Big M, the Meadowlands. Who wouldn't want to call a race there?
That's a good question. I would like to go back home to Yonkers at some point. I haven't been back to New York. Oh Lord, it was probably after 9/11, so it's been about 20 years or so now, I guess, and maybe 15, whatever it is. I can't even remember how long it's been, but it's been a while since I've been back up there. So I think I would love to go to Yonkers. I'd love to go back to Monticello and kind of revisit where I started. That kind of thing. Make my way back around there. Mile tracks have never been an interest for me to announce that. I like my halves and I like my 5/8. I'd love to announce back home. I live in Ohio, so I would love to just announce an entire card at another track in Ohio. I did get to do Scioto Downs about a half a card one night for Barry Vickroy, and it was my first time ever announcing there, so that was a blast. But I'd love to announce at one of these other tracks that I'm living right by as well.
There's a lot, but Saratoga I grew up less than an hour from Saratoga, so everybody knows my dream is Saratoga Thoroughbreds one day. We'll see, not that I wouldn't want to call a Hambletonian or call another 20 Battle Lake Eries here, but in the long run, yeah, where you see yourself in 20-year picture for me is I'd like to be at Saratoga. A lot of steps to get there, I'm sure, and a lot of different jobs and people, and keep doing the right thing. But that is if I could call one race and be done calling Thoroughbreds, it would be one race at Saratoga.
Well, I've been, again, I'll kind of do a dual answer here. I've been at All-Star Announcers Day at the Breeders' Cup on 3 separate occasions. I called a race at Arlington Park, and I'm still really good friends with John G. Dooley, who was the announcer there at the time and is now at Horseshoe Indianapolis. And he and I, try to talk, every so often. So I did that. I also did a race at Lone Star Park in 2004. And then 2006, I did a race at Churchill Downs. And that one was really terrific. To call a race at Churchill Downs was something else. And as far as the standardbred side, I would say probably the Meadowlands. That was, being from New Jersey originally, I would think that would be kind of nice to be able to call a race there or call it an evening of racing at the Meadowlands, and be a part of what's going on there, because and we know that the Meadowlands is kind of the A track for standardbred racing, the one that everyone looks to for everything going on in the sport. All the big horses race there, and then that's probably would be my choice.